Hey guys, it's Babs here. I know you're going to love hearing my voice. Alrighty, so we're going to do our first video together. Go ahead and get your Cornell notes out, or actually, it's a form of Cornell notes, but we're going to call them focus note taking using the Cornell template. Alrighty, so go ahead and get those out. Go ahead and write rational numbers as your topic. And then in the corner, you're going to put 7th grade, either you're in pre-AP or you're in GT Math. Put your class period, and then I put August. Go ahead and put the actual date. So as of right now, you should have these two things on your, on your paper. You should have that on your note page and that on your note page. Alright, the words that we're going to go over today, or maybe even tomorrow, or that I may say in this video, are a rational number, terminating and repeating number, pi, perfect square, and square root. Forgive me for forgetting the comma in between the square, perfect square, and square root. Alright, make sure that you have all the keywords written down in the corner. We're going to start with the first vocabulary word, which is repeating decimals. Repeating decimal is just the digits continue to repeat. So the digit after the decimal is going to continue to repeat. Here are some examples of repeating decimals. So if you notice, you have the 0.12535353, and the dot 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 just means that it's going to continue to go. Now, if you notice on all of these, we have this line over the numbers. Those lines right there just means that the numbers up under the line are going to be repeated over and over and over again. So the 5-3 keeps being repeated 5-3, 5-3, 5-3, and the 7-5-2 keeps being repeated 7-5-2, 7-5-2, 7-5-2, and the 0.3 keeps being repeated 0.333. Excuse me. So the numbers with lines above them will continue to repeat, as I just said. All right, the next vocabulary word that we have is terminating decimals. Terminating decimals just means that the digits stop and they do not continue. So an example of that would be 0.25, whereas in this example up here, the 5-3 kept repeating, but in here it's just 0.25 and it stops. There's nothing else after that. Same thing with the 0.55. There's no repeating, it just stops. Same with the 0.185. And same thing with the 0.5. So you have your two separate types of decimals, repeating decimal and your terminating decimal. All right, right here is where you're going to add your questions. Remember, we did the first question, or I'm sorry, we actually haven't done it in this class. So in this section, when you add a question, it's so that when you look back on your notes in 2 weeks, you know exactly what the notes are about. So in this section, we went over repeating decimals and terminating decimals, but I'm actually going to turn that into a question. So I would write, what are repeating and terminating decimals? And put that in here. Now, where it says add your question here, obviously that's not going to be there on your paper. You're actually going to enter in the question that I came up. What are repeating and terminating decimals? And I always forget to put my question mark, so we're going to go ahead and put that question mark on there. Okay. Now we're going to get into square roots. Now, you already went over your video on how to find the square root, use the square root form, square root symbol. So when you do a square root, when you put in square root of 4 in your calculator, which I actually want you to do now, you get 2. You put in the square root of 3, the square root of 9, you get 3. So what that means is the square root of 4 is 2. If I were to put 2 times 2, it would give me 4. So it's kind of like working backwards. This 2 times 2 gives me the 4. On this one, square root of 9 is 3. So what that means is 3 times 3 is 9. The answer to 3 times 3 gives me this 9. Same thing with square root of 169. It basically just, that's 13, or the square root of 169 is 13. So 13 times 13 is, gives me 169. All right, go ahead and add your question here. We did the first add your question here together, but on this one, you're going to want to come up with your own question. The question section has to be answered. The question section is not answered, it will be an automatic 0 on your notes. So make sure you're always doing that. You want to have small chunks. So I have a chunk here, and then I have a small chunk here. You need to have at least 2 questions, especially if you're on the front sheet. Now, if you get to the back sheet, you need to have at least probably 4 or 5 different questions. But don't just write one question for the whole. All right, here are some examples that we're going to do together. So on this one, it wants us to locate the square root of 8 on the timeline. So if I do square root of 8, I get 2.828. 2.828. So if I were to put that on the on the number line, here is 1, here is 2, and that's 2.8. It's almost going to be the 3. So I'd probably put that right about there. Right about there. All right, on this one, it's going to want to find the square root. So if I were to use my square root sign, the square root of 100 is going to be 10. Now this one looks really interesting because we have a fraction. Actually, before I skip to that one, square roots, there's always 2 square roots. So this is actually going to be the square root of 100 is going to be 10, but it's also going to be negative 10. So it's going to be the positive of that number, and it's going to be the negative of that number. And I'll just put in my numbers. All right, now on the 4 and the 25, we're just going to keep it as a fraction, and we're just going to square root the top and square root the bottom. The square root of 4 is 2, and square root of 25 is 5, so the answer here would be 2 over 5, and also negative 2 over 5, because remember I told you that it's going to be, there's 2 square roots. One's going to be positive and one's going to be negative. Go ahead and write your question here. And then we are all done today. So go ahead and add your summary here. Summary has to be on the bottom. The summary is basically what information the notes gave you. That way, if you go back in 3 weeks, 6 weeks before STAAR test, you knew exactly what type of information you got. That section again, along with the question section, also has to be filled in for you to get credit. Alrighty, you got it, kids. Teens. See you tomorrow. Babs is out. Adios.